I'm going to do a marker, so just a
Thank
quick
you.
clap. Marker.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mosley, for joining us at Richland Library, and congratulations on the new novel, Touched.
Thank you.
So we'll get started with some questions. We're here at the library. Can you describe an early experience you had in a library?
Well, when I was a kid, my father was the supervising custodian for a small Los Angeles city school. And in the summer, what he would do is he would clean all the rooms. Scour all the floors. Do all of the furniture. Find out what was working, not working. He just did the whole school. And so then I would come with him, and I would go into the library. It was so much fun. I would go to the library, and you could just, all the books were there. You could just go through all the books. And, I remember, the Wondrous Flight to the Mushroom Planet. I think that was the name of the book. It was just about these kids who build a spaceship, and this guy comes and turns their, cartons spaceship into a real spaceship, and they go to this planet halfway between the Earth and the wood, called the Mushroom Planet. And it was just wonderful. And I would just be able to find books. I'd read the first page. I didn't like it. I'd go look for another book. It was a great experience, just me alone in the library.
Sounds wonderful. What are you currently reading?
What have I been reading? I've been reading The Painted Bird, and I've been reading Chester Himes's Rage in Harlem. A Rage in Harlem, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your process for writing a mystery?
I would love to tell about my process for writing a mystery. It's just I don't know exactly what it is. I mean, I'll decide. For me, it's so much about character that I just talk about the characters, and the characters get in trouble. And so you start with the character, they get in trouble, and the rest of the book is kind of getting out of trouble. And I never know where it's going to start, and I certainly don't know where it's going to end.
Notably, you write every day. Can you tell us about the place where you sit when you write?
Well, I write every day. So, for instance, today I'm in Columbia, South Carolina. So I sat at a desk in a hotel room this morning and wrote, and that's what I do. When I'm at home in New York, I have a chair. When I'm at home in Los Angeles, I have a different chair. But the truth is that I write wherever I am, wherever I can sit down and put my computer or my paper in order and start writing.
Do you have other art forms that you do, like drawing or painting, and how does that play into your writing process?
I've been doing a series of drawings that I call Alien Script, which is, I imagine, when I was a kid, my parents used to read to me, and it was amazing. All these incredible stories. There was the giants and palaces and the horses running through the air, beautiful stuff. And that's what I thought that reading and writing was. Of course, you go to school and they say, okay, here's a paper, A, B. By the time you get to Z, you forgot all about what your parents were doing. And I thought, I want to go back and write these, draw these colorful characters, characters as in letters, across line, draw lines across a piece of paper and do that. And that would be writing. My imagination, the writing I imagined when I was a child. And I've been doing those drawings, I don't know, at least 50 years.
In several interviews, I noticed that you often wear a pin on your jacket, including I saw a ladybug and a dog or a Dalmatian. Can you explain your interest in the pins and whether there's any significance to the one you pick when you wear one?
Well, the significance is that I like them, and it's one of the things that I wrote an article about many years ago that I believe in, I believe in pocket art, that you can have art in your pocket, on your finger, on your vest. And it separates you from museums, because in museums, there are these people who decide, what you look at, how you look at it, what's important, what's not important. And I just believe that pocket art is really important. I read, there's a guy somewhere who started a museum of pocket art. And, and when I read about it, it was because he had read my essay about pocket art, and he thought it was a good idea, so he started this thing. And so the pens I wear, though I'm not wearing one today, the pens I wear are a reflection of that, choosing your own art.
That's really great. I really like that. As someone who wants to promote the accessibility of art, that's really good.
Well, one of the great things about pocket art, if you have friends who do it, you could just go to like a diner or something, sit around a table and bring out your most important pieces and say, well, this is an ancient sculpture. It's from 600 AD. You bought it for like $50 somewhere, but and somebody else has. I knew one guy who had the entire Bible on one piece of microfiche. You couldn't read it or anything, but it was there. Just the idea, the potential of micro art.
You're well traveled. What are some characteristics of a truly great city?
Wow. Well, the first thing about a really good city is the architecture. How is it built? What does that look like? What kind of character do the buildings have? How old is the architecture? I think part of the sewage systems of Rome are over 2,000 years old. That's one thing that's wonderful. Another thing is the character of the people. Is it a friendly place? Is it a happy place? Is it a place where there's room for individuality and humanity? Another is the attention to art and to culture. So museums and libraries, and of course, food. If a city doesn't have good food, you don't want to go back there. So I don't want to go back there because all they have is fried dough. It's no good.
How do you create names for your characters? Because you have a lot of them. You've written a lot of books, and so what's your mechanism for coming up with a character's name?
Well, I have a few mechanisms. Number one, I just come up with names. If I'm doing it in English, you just come up with a name. There's a word, and you turn it around, and it becomes a name. If it's somebody from another language or culture, I usually, spend a little time looking up what the different names are and what they mean and how one can use them. When I started writing the Easy Rawlins novels, you have your main character, Ezekiel Rawlins. His life is a really hard life. He's been an orphan since the age of 7. He's been on his own. He's black in the deep South in America. He has all these problems. So they call him Easy because he's anything but easy. Then you have his best friend, Raymond Alexander, a little guy, doesn't, somebody that if just looking at him, he wouldn't bother you, but he's the deadliest man you ever met. And so calling him Mouse is a really interesting thing because, he's little, but he ain't no mouse, and that kind of stuff is fun.
So sometimes using connotations to names.
Yeah.
Can reading literature with characters that are different than the reader help build empathy, and then through that empathy kind of create a stronger community?
Well, it's so interesting. You see, most people, young, old, male, female, black, white, whatever, are the same. We do the same things. We go to sleep, we wake up in the morning, we're hungry, we go to the bathroom, we need water, we need love. We're afraid of love. We are afraid of other things. We're we feel protective of ourselves. We wear clothes, we have design, we have aesthetics. All of these things everybody has. And so I don't think that people are all that different. People think that they're different. So I'm this, I'm Irish Catholic, so that makes me very different than a Greek Orthodox. But no, pretty much you're doing all the same things. And so if you write a convincing story about the experiences of one character, you'll find people from many different places saying, hey, I recognize that. I see myself in that. And so, yes to your question in a way, but not because they were different, because they didn't know they were the same.
What villain from any Marvel series do you find the most extraordinary or remarkable?
God, that's so hard. So talk about him in a few ways. You have Thanos, who I kind of love as a character because I don't know if everybody knows this, but he's incredibly powerful, but he's also self-defeating. That he's never really going to succeed in his goals because he's self-defeating. It only comes up every once in a while, but it's really it's a big thing. And then I remember when I was a kid, it was the Submariner, because he was an enemy of Earth, dwellers. He was an enemy of the people who lived on the surface of the Earth, but he was a hero to those people who lived under the water, because he wanted to protect them, from the destructive processes of the surface dwellers. And so he became both a hero and a villain at the same time. And that was, adolescent boys, that's the way they think.
In a past interview, you mentioned that you'd like to meet Homer, and the phrase you used was, writers, after a while, become fictions themselves. What do you hope becomes the legend of Walter Mosley?
Well, that's lucky, because I have no desire for any kind of legend. It doesn't, life to me is just fun. Having a good time. And I'm not going to waste my time worrying about what I could be or what I could have been or what, how other people are going to see me, because the more you worry about how other people see you, the less you're able to apply honesty to your work.
You're a talented writer. What's something that you're really bad at?
Wow. Well, I could just use that thing, that I'm really good at writing, and I'm really bad at everything else. It's I don't know. I don't even. It's so hard. I don't even know what's being bad at something. Like you can do something and not do it very well, but that again might give you all kinds of help. Let me give you an idea. Most working class students work really hard to do as best they can in school so they can be accepted into school, and so the schools will pay for them. So they do it all through junior high school, all through high school, all through their first 4 years of college, the BA or the BS, and then through their master's degree, they're doing it, and through the doctoral degrees, they're doing it. And what that means is they can never do anything that they're not going to get an A in, because if they start getting grades that are not A's, then they will be a failure, and they won't get the money to go to college. But what they give up is creativity. They're not able to be creative. I understood really early on that writing novels is what I wanted to do. And I also knew that what you need to know to write poetry is everything you need to know to write fiction. So I took classes in poetry. I was in poetry workshops. and I'm really bad at it. I'm really bad at it. I'm not a poet. But it doesn't matter because what I learned made me able to write good fiction. And so even if you're bad at something, that something is, the fact that you're bad at it is going to help you, maybe more than something you're good at.
What's a nostalgic food item from your childhood?
You know, food is all about health. We eat to survive. And when I was a kid and I would get really, really sick and I would get these stomach things and I couldn't hold anything down, my father would make me rice. He'd just make white rice. And he'd put a little butter on it and he'd say, here, Walter, you can eat this. And I could, yeah. It didn't make me throw up. It didn't make me sick. And it's something I love, you know, because, and it's not about how great it tastes or, you know, I do like the texture a lot, but it's about the fact that it's something that played a part in saving my life.
If you weren't a writer, what do you think you'd be doing?
If I wasn't a writer, I'd probably have some kind of degree in something like history or political theory, and I would teach and maybe not like it very much. I'd probably do something like that. I might try to develop more as a painter, though. It's really fun doing things that other people don't want to buy. I would do something. I would work. I was a computer programmer for 15, 16 years, so I might go back to that. I understand computers and how they work, and that I might be able to do something like that. And in saying that, I'm jumping all over the place because, you try things and you see what works.
All right, so that's the end of those sort of open-ended questions. Now it's all this or that.
All right.
New York or LA?
New York in the fall, and LA in the spring.
Oxford comma or non-serial comma?
Say that again.
Oxford comma, the third comma, or non-serial comma, leaving it out.
Oh my God. It's like.
You're the writer. You're not the editor. You may not have an opinion.
Well, the thing about commas is, when do they work? I remember Toni Morrison used to have big arguments. Her big arguments with her editor were about commas, because he was very classic in his use of commas, and she used commas when she thought people should pause, And I think I'm closer to Toni than I was to her editor. But it was a very funny argument. She had it when she got a Lifetime Achievement Award, and her and her editor were having a conversation, and she was very critical of his use of commas.
Justice or vengeance?
Justice.
Global or local?
You see the difference there. Really, I'm sorry, because you ask questions that, the problem with local is that you believe it's global. And the problem with global, you forget locality. That's all I can say to answer that question.
Hero or villain?
The Submariner.
Challah or bagels?
Bagels.
Gumbo or jambalaya?
I think jambalaya would be the thing.
Bath or shower?
Depends on how deep the bathtub was. You know, because you get one of those little, like, shallow bathtubs. It's so awful, you know. You take a shower, but not because you want to take a shower. It's because you don't want to be in that little shallow bathtub.
Ferry or subway?
Ferry.
All right, that's all I got.
Good. I know I didn't answer exactly the way you wanted, but yeah.
Sometimes the answers that you give, even if they're not what is on the paper, is just as good.
And I was going to say, but it wasn't in this case, but sometimes with other people that I've talked to, it was okay.
I didn't say that.